Danny, welcome.
Thank you.
We're really, really privileged to have you with us this evening. I think a lot of people on this platform, we take so much for granted. I'm looking at your background, the profile, what you've been doing. So, I mean, for me, I'm just delighted that you're here with us, that you can share all the knowledge that you have on the topic that we have on discussion tonight. So welcome. We're really privileged.
Thank you very much, Dee.
Brilliant. So Danny, tell us a bit about yourself. So you've been at EcoBank for about 20 years.
Yes.
Amazing.
Okay, so I joined EcoBank in EcoBank Ghana in '97. I was seconded to the group office in 2000 as an IT support person. And then from there, in 2003, I was tasked to establish its information systems audit function. A bit of feedback. Okay. And so I did that from 2003, and that led me to systems audit, information security, investigation, and other such things. In one thing after the other, I have provided services throughout the group, at least 25 countries in the group.
Wow.
It seems to be some feedback. Okay. 25 countries throughout the group. I have provided services to business heads, to the businesses themselves. In certain cases, we've gone through process optimization and so on. Currently, I am back home in Ghana, from where I stayed for more than 11 years. And in Ghana now, I'm heading the audit department.
Excellent. We seem to have a bit of everyone. Do you hear any other?
Is that okay?
That's much better, yes.
Okay. So,
Okay, we seem to have lost it now. It seems okay.
Can we go on?
Yes, let's move on. So yes, I mean, so Danny, I mean, from what you've just described, your background, you know, your best person on the platform, lead us on our discussion today on information security. So we'll just start by giving sort of a brief overview of what the discussions are going to be about. And then we'll just unleash into the questions that some of the people on the platform have shared with us that they would like you to, you know, share your experience and expertise on.
Great. Okay.
So information security, obviously we know we're all hearing some exciting news about the growth in Ghana in particular at the moment. And I think with every country growth, be it emerging markets or what have you, technology obviously is a key aspect or key area that enables these growth.
Yeah.
So information security, should we be worried? Things that, you know, we're growing in Ghana, things are changing, we are moving, we're developing. You think we should be worried about information security, cyber security at this stage, or is it too early?
Worried, yes and no. Information security has become an integral part of our lives today. Most of it is on or it's not, information security is not only about electronic media, but also about interaction. For instance, speaking to you now, I am, for instance, careful not to divulge certain confidential information about my company. That could end up in places that I do not expect at all, or have not.
Well, on YouTube, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So in today's world, information travels so quickly and is so useful that it is and should be an integral part of everything we do. And from the public presidential level to businesses and to even homes, and how we interact, how we school our children at school, the kind of interaction we have with workers and so on. Information security is very prevalent across all these levels.
Right. Excellent. So would you say, in your opinion, what is the importance of information? I think you've answered the question somewhat, but in your opinion, what do you think is the importance of information security in current
what is important
in Africa?
What is important is that we should be well educated. I think that the level of education is extremely low, very. And appreciation of what information means, especially in the business circles, is still extremely low. We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate people that we interact with. We need to educate people that have some form of access to the daily information that we deal with. We need to know in place certain restrictions in what information is classified as confidential, public. We should know what to do with all. Now, beyond this, we need to also put in place measures and structures to ensure that information is in a reasonable manner. I shouldn't just leave my phone without a password so that anybody can get onto it.
Right.
If I have, for instance, my ATM card, my credit card, I need to know how to protect it. I should not leave it. So these are measures that we should take to guard our businesses in today's world.
Right. Right. Obviously, we're talking businesses. So, I mean, how much do you think businesses in Ghana, in particular, are doing to combat these issues? You know, this general awareness. How are companies doing it?
I would say that to a large extent, especially in the private sector, companies are beginning to wake up to the need to implement information security measures to protect their businesses. We have, for instance, had situations or instances where company websites have been hacked. This was foreign, completely foreign to Ghana. But the last 1.5 years, in the last 1 year, I would say, one of the banks, the websites, one of the banks was hacked. With a very mild message. They did not do much about it. They just restored it.
Right.
And it was hacked again, but this time pornographic image was put on the bank's website, and a strong warning message was given to them that they need to up their game.
Wow. Wow.
This was like a friendly step into their space.
Wow.
Yes.
Andy,
So,
we've had ransomware in the western parts of the world. But we're talking about ransomware, aren't we? Or are we talking about something differently? Hackers.
Yes, this is direct hacking. This is ransomware is also a form of such activity, malware on computers. We have seen ransomware in Ghana as well. In some of the companies experienced this ransomware hijacking, and they had to pay to get their data released. Yes. So, but the different forms of activity, security, information security activities that we see elsewhere in the world, maybe in the Western world, typically in the US or maybe in Europe. We are seeing those things in the Ghanaian space and in other African countries as well.
Okay, so we've obviously opened up the debate in terms of the importance, and we're talking about some of the things that we need to look out for.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, I think as we go through the our discussions tonight, a lot of the things that you might want to lighting us with will come up. So let's move on to the second question. So how far have the public and private sectors in Ghana gone to protect the data they hold? And what do you think are we've talked about some of the challenges right now. What do you think are the key challenges?
Okay, I said earlier that the private sector has kind of woken up to the importance of information security. They are, to a large extent, so I'll talk about, let's say, the multinationals, the banks, insurance companies, telecom companies, and the like. They are investing massively in educating their staff, in putting systems and measures to protect their information. The same cannot be said about the public sector. It's a bit behind. Well, I don't know whether it's the norm, but that is how it is. There are a number of things, however, that the public sector is beginning to do. For instance, there is the information cybersecurity policy that has been released by the Ministry of Communication. There have been conferences and seminars and other things being initiated by the government. Okay, and there is real initiative going on in some of the ministries to up their game. It's just that they are still way behind and there's a lot to do. In this area, what I would say is, for us on this forum, those who have the required expertise, the clouds, the weight, should pitch in here. Sometimes it's about communication to people in certain places to get things moving and to be able to consistently and repeatedly pass on the right information. Once those in the right positions understand, positions of leadership, I mean, understand, they would do what they need to do.
I think we've got a long way to go on that. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about mindset change generally. And I, from my background and where I've come from, the one thing that I have noticed in terms of the difference between leadership in the Western world and leadership back home in Africa, or in Ghana, or in other parts of Africa, is that we are very slow to collaborate.
Yes.
We underestimate the importance of collaboration, the importance of sharing information, the importance of knowledge sharing, the importance of having my remit, knowing that I can confidently receive input from other people with similar expertise. And that's where we lack that. So I'm quite excited about this work, this platform, this forum that we have, and having people like yourself who are based in Ghana. And I'm quite interested to hear what you're saying in terms of number of people, expertise that we have on this platform. How do we take it forward? How do we collaborate the point that is no longer a forum that we're just sharing ideas and and then moving on? Where do we take it? How can we take some of the expertise that we have on this platform? How can we take it to the public sector, for example?
One of the effective ways we can use our expertise is to organize public programs.
Right.
Public programs that we can invite the people from the government and people from to share experiences, for people to let others know what they are capable of doing, their experiences, their backgrounds, and also to point to real issues in the system and how these issues can be addressed.
Absolutely.
For instance, I was telling you about what happens to a bank. I know about it, and probably some other people know about it because of where I'm working.
Absolutely.
But it may not be common public knowledge, or it may not be that known to people in influential positions in leadership and in government and other places.
Yes.
Okay, so during conferences, which is one of the major ways of sharing ideas and making impact, I believe that things that are happening, developments that are going on, solutions that are out there, things that need to be done can be brought to the fore at these programs, and listening ears will carry them forward.
Fantastic. I mean, it's great. I think I have come from a marketing conferences background, and like yourself, I've dealt with CEOs from multinational companies. And, I actually held a forum in Ghana at one point, and I was just amazed the lack of collaboration platforms that we have back home with all the expertise that we have abroad. And yet these multinationals, there's nothing that is done without a meeting held with various stakeholders, bringing their various level of expertise together. Action points are then dissected from the meetings, then it's carried out. So I think we need to go beyond perhaps conferences. We start with conferences. How do we go into the niche areas of making sure that all these experts that we have get to the right places within government? I think people like yourself who are based in Ghana, working with people like your counterparts across the world is one way that we can do that. So it's beyond then a conference. It's just making sure we're taking things to the right people. It's about helping. It's about taking knowledge back home, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And probably also coming together to form a recognized body.
Exactly.
Would give us the opportunity to document some of these things and present them to where they should be tabled. A single person making such presentations may not go as far as a group of professionals.
Excellent.
Named. You have the Imani and so who are being taken seriously. Okay, so such groups can come together with a united voice and table issues that will be carried forward.
Fantastic. Well, there's an action point for us. And I think we're going to get there. I mean, I'm passionate about that. But I think we all want to make sure that we're not just on a platform. We are going somewhere. We're going to make sure that all the expertise, if it means just knowledge being shared with our counterparts back home, that we make sure we pass the relevant information on.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. So let's move on, because we've got quite a lot of exciting questions here, and I think we want to make sure we cover all of them. Maybe, I mean, Steve, do you want to jump in with me, or are you happy with me carrying on? We're going to try and do a duo with colleagues here, but I think we'll carry on. The third question, Danny, given your background experience, can you enlighten us on how, I mean, other countries in Africa are dealing with this information, security? Because you've been around, haven't you? You've been around the continent.
Yeah. Right. So generally, what's happening is governments are waking up to the fact that they need to legislate. That is the best. That is how certain rules can be enforced. So some governments are beginning to do it more aggressively than others. Okay. So you talk about the likes of Nigeria, Kenya. Kenya is a very active place where there are a lot more professionals in government who are IT savvy and are also abreast with current trends in economics and so on. and so are able to meaningfully pitch in on information security issues. Now, so when you go to I've talked about Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal. I spoke to the information technology, or it's ICT, ICT minister, something like that, in Rwanda. A young man, this is about 2 years ago, he was about 35 years then. Absolutely on top of his game. And he completely articulated why they are moving all their government platforms and systems onto electronic platforms and help them to be able to better manage and regulate the flow of information, the security of information. Like coupled with this, they have created legal frameworks for data protection, for cybersecurity, and the like.
Wow.
Okay, so a place like Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, if you are doing business with them, they would question, let's say in the financial services sector, they would question you about where exactly your data is hosted, because they want their data to be hosted in the country and for their regulators to have direct access, unbridled access to such data.
Wow.
Yeah. So quite a number of countries are beginning to wake up through legislation and actual implementation. There are still a lot of the countries that are behind, and I don't know what common factors these countries have, but if you talk about countries like Burundi, Central African Republic, Gabon, and the like, Sierra Leone, Liberia, you would see that they may have certain common traits: governance problems, war, extreme poverty, and so my thinking is that probably there are other survival things that are more important to such countries, and they may not yet have woken up to these other very important needs.
Yes, yes. I think, that's it's quite, I would say that it's expected, isn't it? Even if when you look at Western Europe and Eastern Europe, you would find the Western part of Europe is ahead on certain areas of development compared to Eastern Europe.
Yes.
There might have to be a two-tier approach. Of course, you have those that are well advanced in information technology, and the others would have to catch up. That leads me very nicely into the next question. Is there an international standard or framework regarding information security and data protection? In your experience, would you say there's a standard of some form within the continent?
Within the continent?
Yes.
Okay. Within the continent, there are general frameworks. There are general frameworks that have been adopted within the continent. Like I said, they are general. Okay. Next, at the next level, there are a number of international standards that can be used to actualize these legislations that are largely general. Okay, so ECOWAS has something in place about data protection.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The AU also has some kind of provision in place. Next to this, we have internationally accepted frameworks like ISO 27000, which is one of the very popular ones on information security. We have the PCI DSS, that's Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. That has to do a lot more with the use of cards. We have orbits, control objectives for IT. There are a few others that we have that can be practically implemented. What we realize is countries have stopped at these general legislations that exist, but are not actively enforcing these. However, the countries, some of the countries I mentioned earlier, like Ghana, Nigeria, Ghana is doing well, actually.
Ghana is doing well?
Yes, Ghana is doing well, comparatively, yes.
Okay.
They are beginning to enforce some of these regulations. So, for instance, in Ghana, the Data Protection Act was implemented, was made, and the act was outlawed in 2012.
Wow.
In the last few years, some activities have begun in enforcing the Data Protection Act. The same is going on in a number of countries. The enforcement has largely been through these internationally accepted frameworks, ISO 27000, PCI DSS, GDPR, the General Data Protection regulations, some other frameworks that are internationally accepted.
Okay. And you mentioned Ghana's framework, and obviously the data protection in 2012. I believe, or I'm guessing, with the advent or with the digitization that's coming up, are we likely to revisit it, and do we need to revisit it, do you think?
Oh, yes. There has to be a very aggressive campaign for people and companies to be very aware. It is still very much among corporates, and even the corporates, it's the large corporates that are taking this very seriously.
Right.
So for instance, the awareness should be right down to the individual, so that my data with MTN or any other telecom network, I should know the rights that protects the data I have given to them, and what they can use it for, what they cannot use it for, what I can basically where I can hold companies and people responsible for data about me that they hold. Yeah, and this has to be done aggressively. It is when people are aware that enforcement can be effective, so that if someone's rights are breached, the person can take it up in the appropriate places.
Okay, you mentioned campaign and making sure that people are, awareness creation. Where does a corporate, responsibility lie? Who's responsible for that? The public sector, private sector, the companies themselves? Who should be doing that?
Public sector, government should be doing that to a large extent, yes. So for instance, the Data Protection Commission has started in conferences every year.
Right.
At least they have done it for the last 3 years. They have been holding conferences every year. The Ministry of Communication last year held an information security conference.
Okay.
Yes. So I put this to a large extent at the doorstep of the government and the regulators that exist in government. Yes. To create this awareness. After the awareness has been created, the enforcement can be effective.
Okay, so no corporate social responsibilities. The companies don't come in at all with all this awareness creation. It's all government.
The companies, the responsibility of the companies will be to educate their own.
Their own. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That will be in this area. The reason why probably some people have not, some people or companies or institutions have not woken up to the importance of of all these things you're talking about is because they have not been charged.
Well, this is it.
Yes. It takes just one fine, and the rest will sit out. That is basically how it is, because implementing some of these frameworks is money. It costs money. And companies, governments, people would like to understand what benefits they will derive from any of these before they commit finances to it.
That's right.
They commit funds to it. Yes. So if regulators begin to enforce, or they educate, and afterwards begin to crack the whip, that will want to cause to begin to commit funds and actual action to these things.
Fantastic. Danny, thank you so much. I mean, for me, this is extremely, I love hearing, listening to and being educated on several things, and it is very, very enlightening for me. So thank you so much for this scene setting that we've done here. Let's move on to question 5.
Okay.
What would you say the difference is between information security and cybersecurity?
Right.
Is there a difference?
Yes, there is a bit of a difference.
Okay.
Information security. Now let me address information security. It is not all about IT. Information security is about our daily lives, and it is very much a part of what we do on daily basis, interactions, and it cuts across all levels. Okay. Cybersecurity is a subset of information security, and that mainly has to do with data that is stored on computer systems, data or information that is available via the internet. And cybersecurity is very much a part of information security, because all the controls or the guidelines, the framework that we execute in information security, the same applies in cybersecurity. We talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. CIA. That's very easy to remember.
Well, that's very
So the same level of confidentiality that you would apply to maybe your medical records in your file, which you might want to restrict access to even from your children or anybody around. The same classification applies to electronic data. There are different levels of restriction that's applied. Some information, let's say Joy FM starts a new program, that's very public. Okay, so there's a restriction. But however, if the government has some talks with the US on implementing certain an accord between Ghana and the US, they may not want it to be public information, at least from the start. Okay, so the same controls that apply in information security also apply in cybersecurity. It's just that cybersecurity is more digital data inclined. I would also mention that when you're talking about digital or data in electronic form, there's data at rest. A bit technical. Data at rest is basically just data that you've saved on your laptop on a server somewhere. There's also data in transit. I'm talking to you, or I have initiated a bank transfer, or I've sent instruction by SMS. It travels from one point to the other. Okay, so there are controls that you can implement on data at rest or saved some. And there are controls that you should also implement on data in transit or moving from one end to the other. Okay, so you very much realize that the controls are the same. If you send your file, your medical records with your driver to take it to your doctor, you would envelope it and staple it and sellotape it and put it in another bag and padlock it before you give it to the driver to, to send it. The same
Absolutely.
apply across. Yeah, but it's about everything, information security about everything. Cyber security is about electronic data and to some extent also data that is exposed through the internet. Fantastic.
This is a really, really clear explanation of this. We have a question actually from the forum. This is from Michael on the forum. And the question is, there is some overemphasis on frameworks and standards to a fault, even in the first world. And, you know, there are many companies that have been breached, but supposedly satisfied compliance obligations. And what he's saying is that security is not compliance, and compliance is not security. Reducing risks to quantifiable minimum acceptable levels should be the focus, not just checking the box to be compliant. Can you elaborate a bit on that, or perhaps answer that question for us?
Great. That's a very educated view. So I will give 2 illustrations.
Okay.
So you have a fast food joint. You sell chicken, you sell jollof, you sell other delicacies, and you have information on the recipes that you use, etc. You also have information on various things that you do with your business. Okay, you probably may not want to spend about $5 million US to secure this information because of the kind of business you are doing. What will it cost you if someone steals the formula that you use to prepare your chicken at your fast food joint? It might affect you in a way, but there's a lot more to that business. Okay. The other scenario, I work in a bank. The bank has, let's say, about $10 billion of assets, and this includes this is the physical assets that the bank has, and all the businesses, the loans that it has given, and everything, and it is worth $10 billion US. If someone is able to access the bank's systems and break into its electronic data, the person is able to siphon out substantial amounts of money. Okay, so if I spend $5 million US to purchase a solution that will protect my data, I am not overusing or recklessly using my money. I could even up it to $20 million US just to be sure that I protect my business. Now, you would notice in the case of a bank that it will not only be about someone moving money out, but probably customers in the bank realize that their accounts have been tampered with, and they begin to talk. It goes to tarnish the reputation of the bank, and people that might want to do business with the bank will go to other banks or will shy away. A lot of things can happen. A lot of things could happen. There are such breaches. Okay, and so what Michael is talking about is to be able to conduct an appropriate risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
That will help you to understand where you should place emphasis, what you should spend on,
Mm-hmm.
how much you should spend to protect what assets. Okay. If you are able to do appropriate risk assessments, then you would see that for the let's say the aeronautic or the pharmacy, so much to protect their patent. Because if someone steals the patent somehow after they have worked about 15 years just to come out with a drug that would be able to cure malaria, just on the way to release it, somebody somehow steals all that they have done and releases it ahead of them. They would have lost $10 billion of research work, plus everything that they would have done up to that point. So for them, if they use $50 million to protect all that they have done, it is too much. It all depends on being able to correctly assess the risks that your business is exposed to. And that will inform what you should put in terms of finance, people, hands on the ground, and commitment, senior management commitment, etc., to protect your business. Yes. That is how it.
Okay, I mean, and presumably the multinationals are doing this so well. How do we sort of permeate this into the other parts of, the entrepreneurs and businesses that are springing up in Ghana and Western Africa? I guess the responsibility is on them to carry out their own risk assessment and put together the compliance initiatives. Yes,
responsibility partly is on them, and responsibility is also partly on us, because I don't know which indigenous company you could refer to, but probably a company may be well-meaning but may not be aware that this is the level of risk they are running, and someone who understands and knows very well what could happen to the company without protecting their information assets and their businesses in certain respects. If somebody doesn't tell them, put this information out in the public, a well-meaning company may not be aware of the risk they are running, and they will themselves exposed.
Yeah.
There are a number of things. Maersk Line. They were victim to a cyber attack. They were victim to cyber attack, and the controls that they had not put in place, and they were made amounts of money within 1 day. The share prices fell, and lots of businesses were diverted from them just within the space of 24 hours.
Wow. And this is a recent thing?
Yes, this happened in the last 6 months to a year.
Wow.
Yes. I know of a regional bank that lost up to $7-8 million in the space of about 5-6 hours. This was set for protection, security protection had been made to the company about 2 years earlier, but they really did not understand why they should implement those. Now, after the loss, they spent about 4 or 5 times what they could have spent to fix the issue and put in place security.
Absolutely. So the importance of investing in information security or cyber, this area of work is very crucial, obviously.
Yes. And the professionals in the field have a responsibility to repeatedly put that information out there. For those that are less educated, I would not say ignorant, but less educated, those who are less educated could place things in perspective and use the right expertise to secure their businesses.
Okay, we could talk on this topic. I think this is the crust of what we're trying to discuss here. Let's move on to other parts of the questions that we have from the platform. The advent of social media, does that throw a different light, to companies or information security and cybersecurity?
Yeah.
How are companies tackling information security around social media?
This is a problem area, a big problem area.
I thought it would be.
Yeah. Companies are still grappling seriously with how to manage the social media outbursts. There's the example of a lady who landed a dream job, and she was to be an ambassador of a global brand, and it was more or less made for life. Just showing up, and she would be paid millions of dollars. Okay. She was so happy. She traveled to an African country to do a safari tour, and then she took a picture with a dead animal and posted it on her social media site. This killed her contract. By the time she got back home, she had a letter that the company had cancelled her contract because the company had policies against animal abuse.
Wow.
Okay. Yes. We inadvertently give out so much about ourselves and our companies and our businesses, sometimes private information, many things, without realizing that we are giving out so much. Okay. Companies that are aware have created some kind of filtered restrictions to such unbridled supply of information or release of information. So there are certain things that, for instance, on my office laptop, there are certain things that I cannot do on my office laptop. To a very large extent, the solution to managing social media is education. If I know what I can comfortably give out and what I should be careful about giving out, I will be able to manage information flow by myself.
Yeah.
I will not easily, for instance, take a picture of myself topless and post it to friends, because I never know when this picture could get to my MD or my business competitor for them to use it as their advert. Okay. Even if all my office gadgets are blocked, I could still use my private phone to do anything, unless I'm well educated.
Yes.
Okay. And I could use my private phone and it could land within corporate space. Okay. So the critical thing about managing social media is educate staff. There is what we call social engineering. This by far is more powerful than any technology tool that is available. And I will explain. I may not able to easily break a password if you have a password of about eight characters mixed with special characters and all that. It's not so easy to that password. But I could become your friend and take you out for dinner and give you my phone to send a message to a friend on my phone, while I have bagged my phone or put in things on my phone to trap your your password.
Mm.
Or send you, after taking you out, being your friend for about a month, I could send you an email. Maybe you're looking for a job. I send you an email and tell you that I could help you. So fill this form and send it to me.
Wow.
And I could get information that I need to do other things from you. Okay? And you realize that I would have gotten your password without touching a single computer.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So that is called social engineering, and it can be used in several ways. All of this falls within the space of social media. Now, how sure are you that the person you are chatting with on WhatsApp or book is actually the person you think the person is, you think he is?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So education is the most important managing social media. No amount of controls will completely or totally bridle the damage that social media. The other side is that through social media, you could tap into the world's economic resources today, and you can see what's happening with Facebook. You can see what's happening with Google and such media.
Yes.
Yeah, other such channels, Amazon and co. They are using the power of social media, and some people also talk about big data, collecting data from various sources and using it for business.
Wow. So the impact of social media is huge, as you said. I mean, not apart from on the business side of things, we have our own personal security side that we need to look at, because obviously an individual who works for a corporate, you're intertwined, aren't you? So
That's it.
having the education both on the business end, where your company will set certain guidelines and rules as to how you use it. Yeah. On the personal end, you have to make sure that you understand what you're putting out there.
Yes.
In terms of your social security and the information that can be tapped into your social network.
Exactly.
So it's a big one. We could spend the whole forum talking about that.
That's the whole topic. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's move on. I know there are other areas and challenges that we obviously need to look at. So the other area that you talked during your introduction, you talked about the advent of information technology and the advancement. You talked about the various countries that are catching up. M-Pesa started in Kenya. Other parts of the continent are catching up. I mean, I think you missed out one country when you were giving the elaborations of how certain parts of the continent are doing well in information technology. I think Ethiopia is also an area that is really coming up.
Yes.
In terms of that. So M-Pesa started in Kenya, and it's caught up very quickly. I mean, you look at Ghana and we're looking at more money, which is really catching up. So with the growth of money, mobile money, which is the seventh question that we have, with the growth of mobile money in e-commerce in Africa, because we're seeing this more in Africa than we are in the Western parts of the world. How safe are the transactions and mobile wallet?
Safe?
is the question, isn't it? Is the under question.
It is. There's a certain level of success of transactions that give the perception of safety. Yeah, and in many countries, that level of success is there. Okay. However, the safety of these transactions depend on three main categories. The company that is providing the service, let me use MTN for this purpose, for this discussion. Okay, so MTN as a company is providing mobile money services, and so within the company they have created the structures to facilitate this mobile money activity. In between, you have telcos, other communication companies that are transmitting messages from different destinations. And then on the receiving end, you have the people that are sending and receiving. Each of these three help to make to reach that critical threshold to give perception and impression that the electronic money transfer or mobile money, digital money, whichever way you want to call it, is safe to a large extent. Now, on the side of the company that has started this facility, they need to put in place sufficient controls to ensure that things don't happen, unauthorized activities don't happen at their end. I wouldn't talk so much about that because we are not so privy to what goes on at that end.
Right.
Transit, a lot of things can happen in transit. So what I expect is that messages that go from one place to the other should be encrypted, and that's very easy to do.
Right.
Yeah, so I would expect that MTN will encrypt messages. Encryption is a bit of a technical term. I'll explain it simply. So your name is Doris. It could be 1, 2, 3, 8, 5 ABC XYZ AAAA alpha beta gamma, all that. And it's just a simple formula that does that, so that anybody that intercepts it is not able to make much sense out of it. But when it gets to the receiving end, it appears as Doris. Okay, so the company that is providing the mobile money service has the responsibility to ensure that data that goes up and down is appropriately encrypted and can safely go in between. If it is not encrypted, I sitting in my house now could just intercept messages and divert them to different destinations.
Right.
It's not so difficult to do.
Okay.
So encryption, and then on the receiver end, there has to be a lot of education, and that is where I will focus on, because that is where all of us are, or most of us are.
Yes.
There has to be a lot of education for you to be able to understand messages that you receive, what is legitimate and what is not. When you send a message out, to know that the message has been sent to the right destination, or the message got into the right destination, you get a feedback and all that. So on the be able to understand what goes on with electronic transmissions. But to a large extent, the service providers have done very well.
Okay.
And the perception out there is that though they are frauds, these channels are good enough.
Okay.
Western Union, when Western Union started, the controls around Western Union were very flexible.
Okay.
Very flexible. People could defraud. But what they did was they reserved up to about 7 or 8% of their total revenues to pay back anybody who was defrauded. This was a strategy to promote the remittance service. Okay, so over time, because it was easy for people to use Western Union, because of the flexible controls, a lot of people started using it. And then when the client base had grown, they upped the controls.
Wow.
And typically, this is one of the ways by which companies are able to grow their electronic payments business.
Okay. Danny, you sound very confident. So I think you mentioned that at large, security measures are there, so there aren't, concerns. I mean, we have growing youth coming out of university with very little to do, and I would say, especially around mobile money, there are lots of technical or technological expertise or experts out there. Are you confident that hackers are not get into this area of transaction and start? I mean, we've seen ransomware. Aren't people with all these youth with very little to do, no work, in the workforce, and not being empowered or not being taught leadership skills? Aren't we? Aren't there risks around this?
Yeah, there are risks. The truth is, if a hacker sets his, or for that matter, her eyes on on you or your company, you can't stop that person.
Right.
Yes. There is no such thing as 100% security. Security was created by people. So if you have the likes of Anonymous on your case, there's no way that even the Department of Defense in the US is going to be able to prevent them from getting in. However, what is important is that there have to be effective monitoring systems to be able to, of course, this is after putting in place the necessary security that one can put in place. There have to be effective monitoring systems that can detect quickly and early when a breach happens. And there has to be also a well-rehearsed way to respond and to mitigate any such breach. This is the best way of handling cyber hacks. A lot of knowledgeable people that are coming out of the universities. Yes, I mean this is the best way to handle them. You can't stop.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. I think we're within the hour of the time that we have, so we want to make sure that we cover all the questions that we've been sent by the platform. The eighth question, Danny, is will the current government, I think we touched on this earlier on in our discussion, will the current government national digitization program, how do you see that impacting information security?
It's both positive and negative. The digitization program is being ramped up so rapidly. What that does is it opens up several avenues that need to be secured. Okay, so for instance, we're talking about the paperless clearing system. We all believe that it is tamper-free, and we expect that tariffs that should be charged will not be tampered, so on. Yeah, this has been done very quickly, and typically when such things are done, the first focus is not on security. The focus is on getting systems to work. We have the passports system, which is now online. People can submit information online. We have a number of other systems coming up that enable people to electronically interact with various government agencies. Not only the government, but other private entities and entrepreneurs, institutions are also linking up to public systems in various ways. So what happens and what will happen is that security may not be entirely as good as expected, and this would expose us to security lapses. This would be fixed, and it's the normal process that when systems come up after some time, they will be fixed. The security lapses or weaknesses will be fixed, and things will go on just fine. Like I said, there's nothing like 100%. So sometimes as things happen, we fix them. The positive side is that, well, one of the things that I am not happy about that we have still not gotten our hands around is the national ID system, which would have solved a lot of issues for us. It's still somewhere here and there. It's still not done. Okay. Now, the positive part of digitization is we get to have a lot more control on data and information. We are able to better track activities. We are able to better control this large population that we have. We are able to mine data to know what is going on in various parts of the country, who is receiving what. We talk about the national health insurance. So who is using it, who is not, what ailments are prevalent, where are these? If we have our data digitized, we are able to get this just by the press of a button. So the positive side of it is so huge that it overshadows what could be negative.
Absolutely.
And I think that it is the right direction to go. The lapses, we will fix them. Hopefully.
We will fix them, hopefully. You're that confident. I mean, this program is just so huge. And I wonder, we talked about this earlier on, in terms of government, the advisory around the whole program. You mentioned that when it comes to information security, that obviously the private sector are always far ahead in terms of what they can do, because they have more capital, they have more knowledge, they have more expertise. I wonder how the government is pulling the right resources to make sure that, as you mentioned, the benefits around this could be so big. But then if you don't have the right implementation strategy, the longevity or how long the whole project will take, it could cost more. How is the government, do you think, pulling the right resources, the right advisory? And we talk about, platforms such as us. How can they tap into the right expertise and right advisory to make sure that the whole program is successful?
Actually, this government is very open to bring on board knowledgeable people, expertise, the right expertise. Yes. Very often, it is the case that the government is not able to find the appropriate people.
Right.
Yes. So this government is reaching out very much. The government is partnering a lot with the private institutions, the private sector, people that have expertise in specific areas. This government is reaching out very actively, and I'm aware of that.
Oh, fantastic!
I have one of my very good colleagues who is more or less he serves more or less as an advisor on some things. It is no formal appointment or anything, but there's a person who has so much knowledge, so much information, so much experience. He is called from very senior sources.
Fantastic.
When, yes, he is consulted. I mean, at any time, please come, we want to meet you, that kind of thing. Beyond that, I have seen also government institutions engaging established institutions. I belong to ISACA, Information Systems Audit and Control Association. It's an international association, international institution. We have a chapter in Ghana, and there are government agencies that have reached out to us to be able to get expertise and advice and information from us. Okay, so I guess from the government, they are willing to step out. From the private sector, there should be a lot more activity in showing ourselves that this is what we are capable of doing. And I believe that if we do that, and the government is aware that they can get this kind of expertise from this place, from this person, from this institute, from this company, they will reach out.
Oh, excellent. I mean, that's encouraging to know. That's really encouraging to know. And I wonder if there are, appropriate channels that people know that if you're in the private sector, you have certain expertise that you can channel your knowledge, your expertise to. You say government is reaching out. How do we know? I don't see it. Where do they go? How do they promote such outreach?
For instance, I talked about the the cybersecurity conference that was held last year. As part of it, there were breakout workshops. Okay. So in these workshops were led by governments. People from government together with other private sector people. Okay. But in these workshops, very specific workshops, they were able to directly interact with entrepreneurs, with experts, and people that sat in the main conference hall and could not have been noticed. So they went away with contacts that they are now using. I'm aware of some of those contacts.
Excellent.
Yeah, there is the Data Protection Commission, the conferences they are organizing also, they used similar methods.
Okay.
There are other avenues as well. Through the ministries, they think these ones are like openly advertised.
Okay. Are you still with us, Danny? Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, yes.
I know we have someone from Ministry of Communication in our forum, for instance, and there are ways by which they reach out to get people who have the requisite background, expertise, knowledge, and they actually contact these people, rope them in, and use them. Yes.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that. And we have to find ways of streamlining this and making sure that we really tap into the wealth of knowledge that we have in the diaspora. I mean, there's so many people that can really be helping one way or the other. And I believe that strategic campaign and something that is done in a way that everybody's aware of it can only help. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the other question that we had, and it was around mobile money and the security around that. I believe we have one other question from the platform from Barbara. And the question is, sometimes you get messages from your bank or on the face of it, reliable sources requesting information. How do you differentiate the genuine from the fake? Because she believes that, criminals are so sophisticated these days, and everything is made to look like the original source. Okay,
good question. So there are some of it may be a bit technical, and I may not be able to demonstrate it, but I will give some simple tips. For instance, in electronic interaction, everything as much as possible, especially from the banking institutions, everything as much as possible is is system driven. So a bank will not ask you, someone send you information to reset your password. No. If your password has expired or is going to expire, the system that you use, if it is internet banking or it's a mobile app or which you use for your banking activities, the system will prompt you. Okay, so if someone sends you a message that we are doing certain upgrades on our system, so we want you to reset your password, go to this link and reset your password. It is not from the bank.
Right.
Yeah, the bank will not ask you to give your card details. No. You use your card details on the platforms that the bank has provided. And if there is anything that you need to do, the platform will prompt you. Okay. So if you receive especially an email that looks very much like something coming from the bank, what you could do is call the helpline from the bank, find out whether this is coming from them. Anybody from the bank, from their contact centers, will be able to help you out, to let you know that the bank is carrying out a certain activity and has actually sent you that information or not. What typically a bank will send to you is maybe education on what comes from the bank and what does not come from the bank.
Yeah.
They will tell you to be wary of so and so and so. I have received something that was exactly like the bank's internet banking site, exactly, asking me to log in to reset my password, and I had to log in with my own password first before doing the reset. Okay. Because I was aware of it, I didn't. Okay. It is not only, that's not the first time, that's not the only time I've received such a thing. I've received a number of messages, sometimes by email. I have received something that looked exactly like my Google login. And if I had gone for it, my credentials would have gone to somebody. So the tip I would give to you is that if you receive a message asking for any information from you, call the bank, call the contact center, the helpline, and verify.
Absolutely.
Don't provide your information here.
Yeah. I think we all have to decipher what is genuine and what is not. They are very sophisticated. I mean, for example, I had a phone call this week from a voice or a company from India. And they were asking me a question. They said, well, I'm calling you because we can see that there are, disruptions on your internet. And I knew there wasn't. And the voice wasn't very confident. So I had to say, well, who are you? And where are you calling from? And they said they were calling from BT. But I could decipher, actually, it wasn't BT call because I had no problems with my internet. I think they are getting really sophisticated these days. So you have to decipher. Thank you so much, Danny. We're going to move on to the next question because I really want us to go through all the questions. Next one is, what is digital forensics?
Digital forensics. Okay. Digital forensics. Okay. Illustration again. There are several other cases that some of them are still pending. Some are able to be unraveled. Now, call a forensic expert. What they usually say is they just need a clue. They just need to find a clue, and with that, they will be able to draw the whole picture. it is a science. Okay, so if they find a hair strand, they can that and identify people, follow trails, tracks to various locations, and through that they are able to piece together a picture. This can be directly translated into the digital space. So I will. So the digital forensics basically means taking the very basic data and using it to reconstruct a picture of exactly what happened, something that happened. Digital forensics is used for different things. It's used for enhancing systems. It is used also for fraud detection. I have done forensic investigations in some countries. In one of them, I've had to go to court for someone to be testify as an expert witness for someone to be jailed for 2 years. Okay. Information that was given to us was just about one account being used for fraudulent activity. When I got to the ground, I did 100% scan of accounts and activities on the accounts, and realized that there were more accounts, not just the one that had come to somebody's attention. So with this, we were able to paint a picture of exactly what had been happening, unknown to the person who was doing this. And the person who was doing this was the head of IT. Okay, so that's the person I was up against. He didn't know that I was doing this. I extracted all his logs, the times he was visiting the system, what exactly he was doing, the people that he was interacting with, and all that. The accounts that he was visiting, and the pattern of his visits to the various to those accounts. So I was able to separate the unusual activities from his normal activities. That is how I was able to trace that there were more accounts involved. Now, these accounts have, because they have their files with us. So I got the information about the people. I did a lot of background checks, found out a lot more about people, their activities with the bank over time. And so when I approached each of them, I approached them from a knowledge point where they could not refuse that they had done certain unauthorized activities. Eventually, all of them admitted they did. The IT head did not know that I had gone through these activities. So I came back to the IT head and told him that this is what you've been doing, so and so and so and so. If you interacted with this person, that person, on this date, you did this, on that date, you did that. Information was so accurate that it wasn't an issue of admitting or not. I was putting to him exactly what had happened. And this is what digital forensics is about. It's not, you don't go through a guessing exercise. But once you begin to capture the picture, you capture exactly what happened, and you piece the information together to paint a picture of exactly what has happened. So this is what I had to present to the court, and the person was jailed. So digital forensics is basically putting together information digitally. You can extract this at very low levels from system logs through different layers, through different levels. And with all this information, piecing them together, you're able to construct pictures about what people have done, their behaviors, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. This is all very technical to me. They all sound fantastic, but it's all very technical to me. But thank you so much, and that was very, very useful. So we're going to move on to question 10.
Okay.
The question is there an equivalent of general data protection regulation in Africa? And do we have in place regulators in Africa for such regulations?
At the moment, there are only general provisions that, yes, I think I earlier mentioned there is such provision like that for ECOWAS. There are some regions also that have such provisions. Yeah, but yes, they are general. They are general as far as I know for now. Now the GDPR is a lot more specific, and within these frameworks, countries can decide to adopt the general data protection regulations requirement, which, for instance, include the appointment of a data controller. In every institution, registered company that is a custodian of data, especially data that belongs to somebody else. Yeah. So yes, there are general provisions for now. And then countries are beginning to adopt, incorporate, and enforce the general data protection regulations that are in line with the general provisions.
I mean, I know that GDPR is something that is coming up a lot because of Brexit.
Yes.
And if we go back to what we're talking about in terms of what the government's major program is in terms of digitization, do you not think that we need something of that nature in Ghana?
It should be at the forefront of what government is doing now.
It should be.
It should be. Frankly, I do not know whether government is doing this, but this, at least it is encouraging. We have a data protection commission. So I do expect that through the commission, the relevant provisions will be implemented.
Yeah, and I think and I think we talked about this, and in terms of, you know, when you're putting together a project of this statute, you know, and the importance, it would be such a shame not to have all these things in place. That would then impinge on the success. So the more the likes of you are involved in advising and encouraging your counterparts to help, you know, in advising the government, I think the better it will be for all of us.
Absolutely, yes, yes. One of the things that makes it really important that, especially for the general data protection regulations that we adopt quickly, is that it is being activated. It's going to be fully activated in Europe in May. Now, what has it got to do with us? Any company that has dealings with Europe or any country in Europe will, in a way, be subject to the implementation of the GDPR, as we call it.
Yes.
Okay. So we cannot just say that yes, it is in Europe. We are yet to implement it, but it affects us in various ways. Transactions between several destinations in Europe and many countries in Africa on daily basis and in huge amounts. So we cannot just sit aloof. We need to drive the implementation. We need to go along with the trends that are coming up in other destinations.
Or at least learn. if we're not in a position to, or we feel that it's not the right statute for us at this occasion, learn from it, surely.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Steve, I don't know if you want to jump in. I mean,
yeah. So Danny, I think basically with the GDPR obviously unfolding in EU, some of the multinationals, like you said, obviously have places in Europe. So they obviously have to make sure that by May they're compliant. Now, with the subsidiaries in Africa, and you know, who probably don't hold data on people in Europe, will it still be enforced? I mean, in your part of Africa?
Yes, actually, like I said, various countries in Africa, or a number of the countries in Africa, are beginning to enforce GDPR regulations. Of course, there's a realization that there's a business side or aspect to it. So companies and governments are beginning to wake up to its enforcement. I am sure that after May, a number of countries would also be pushed to declare enforcement of GDPR. See, in today's world, if it's difficult to talk about a company or business that is so isolated. I may send an email to a company in Europe or have a partnership with a company in Europe. Even if all I sell are indigenous artifacts, I may want to export to destinations maybe in Germany or France or elsewhere, or even to another African country. And the data and information around this, we may want to find a way to keep it either where I am or elsewhere. Now, for small businesses that probably operate within localities, it may not be so relevant to enforce GDPR at this level. But as soon as a business begins to grow beyond its borders, GDPR becomes relevant. We are already seeing in Africa regulators beginning to make demands on cross-border businesses. Where is our data located? And regulators beginning to call the shots and insist that if you are dealing with clients, institutions, corporates in our jurisdiction, we would want the data to be located in our space, especially in the area of financial services. EcoBank operates not a unique model, but our model is a centralized one. So we have data, banking data, for more than 30 countries sitting in only 2 places. Because of where we are in a large forum, so I wouldn't want to mention which locations. So we have, for instance, had requests from different countries about where our data is. We want the data to be in our country. And in certain cases, we have had to make elaborate presentations and also given them access to the extent possible to give them comfort that the business we are running is in their interest. And the reason for insistence for data to be within their borders is for the regulator to be able to enforce whatever they want to enforce when necessary. And so if we demonstrate that even though the data does not entirely reside with them, they may and they could have full access once we demonstrate that. They weigh the pros and cons of still insisting that the data be in their country against the kind of business that they are looking at. And thankfully, in all circumstances now, for all the instances that we have had such requests, we've been able to defend our model.
Okay, and I mean, the reality also of the situation is there is going to be really heavy fines for non-compliance if caught. And so it's going to be quite interesting to see how it might start to affect European multinationals who have subsidiaries all over the place, especially in Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess I said earlier too, when the first fine drops, the rest will wake up. Okay. Yeah. I have personally signaled we have a subsidiary in France. Okay, and I have signaled, and others have also signaled that we watch France with a very close eye. So we've already taken steps. The regulator there can have access to all that they need, and they're comfortable that their data resides where it should be. I do not think that Africa is ready to deal with Europe or destinations outside Africa as we should. Within Africa, we understand ourselves, and we are able. We will go a bit slowly. We will get there. But for any business that is between Africa and elsewhere, I think that you have to take the GDPR very seriously and ensure that regulators are first satisfied. Afterwards, you can go and have all the discussion you want, but regulators should be first satisfied, and the rest can follow.
Okay, thank you very much. Dee, I think we can continue.
Right. I can't. All right.
Yes.
I can get you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to jump into the next question, Danny. Thank you so much. I think it's been very, very, from where I'm sitting, very insightful. And I'm sure the platform are finding this information very, very, important and relevant too. I'm going to move on to question 12. I think we've covered question 11 to some extent. So I'm going to move on to question 12. And that goes back to the government. I think we're all very excited about the government because we know that that's the area that we need some work. So the question from the forum is that government has gone high tech, as some have, as has some banks as well, with online forms, passport applications, postcode, address, and etc. How secure is our private and personal data?
How secure is our private and personal data?
Yeah.
I cannot give the accurate status on this. However, to a reasonable extent, and let's say to a minimum level, we have systems, we have tools, we have provisions, we have controls in place to protect private data. When you go to hospitals, for instance, our files to a large extent are secure. I would, however, say that sometimes when it has to do with certain institutions, it's a bit uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to mention names of particular institutions, but it has to do very much with the people in the institutions. People need to be educated. The right people should be in the right places. You could have a well-guarded house with dogs, with security systems and everything, but someone can go out and leave the door open. Okay, and in many cases, this is the case that people are the weakest links. People in public institutions may not be as aware and switched on to protect data as the private does. So a lot of the things that are being done now, I believe that the people that are handling it should also be educated, and probably new hands should come on board. New hands that have better understanding of where we are driving to and the importance of protecting such data and information. That's what help us. As for the systems, as for the tools, as for the documentation, policies, standards, to a large extent, if you go to public institutions, government agencies, you will find these in place. How they are being used, I really cannot guarantee. I can't authoritatively comment on that. Don't be afraid to send your passport details, though. I think it's okay. I haven't seen my passport details out anywhere.
That's encouraging words, and that's very good to know. And Nadia, I think, again, this whole thing about the framework being there, you've mentioned that on several occasions, and you say that you're confident that there are frameworks in place.
Yes.
How effective are they? And this is going into question 13. You mentioned the ISO. Yes. The private sector, I guess you can vouch for it to some extent. I should say nothing is 100%.
Yes.
When we go to the government, the public sector, how effective are these ISO frameworks that we're working to in Ghana, in Africa?
It comes down to a large extent to the people again. It's as effective, these standards are effective as how the people implement it. I will give an example. I have a 6-digit password. It's supposed to be for only me. I could easily hand that over to the next person so that I could go for a funeral. This happens a lot. Or maybe I'm hard pressed. I just need to step out. I'm a public servant, and I do not attach so much importance to what has been put in place. So I give my credentials to someone to be able to stand in for me when I'm out. Many of the controls, in effect, are made effective by people. Beyond this, you would find also ISO governments are implementing ISO standards, ISO 27000 for information security, classifying their data into confidential business and public information, etc. A lot of governments are doing that. However, we always see the media leaking confidential information into public space. To reinforce what I said earlier, that it comes down to people. In Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Rwanda, in Cote d'Ivoire, a lot of the ministries have gone through ISO 27000 certification and others. But I can still get information if I want. Okay, so I believe that as for the implementation of the frameworks, it is being done. And in many cases, you will find that they have been implemented. A critical thing, leadership must lead the way. They must demonstrate, and the rest will follow. If information comes out, that should be confidential, and it comes out. Leadership should trace to where the information was leaked, and action should be taken. If this is done consistently, we would realize that probably our public sectors are not that bad. They may have implemented all the right things. Okay.
But okay, I mean, so at least we're hoping that if things are being implemented, they are also being enforced, especially in the public sector. But I mean, for example, they're holding a lot of information for passport applications, all kinds of forms that we fill. What will be the risks that they face if they do not enforce these standards?
Right, okay, so enforcement are on two levels. Enforcement is placing the right controls in systems. Okay, so without the right controls, there could be a lot of unauthorized access to data, and that's in many cases, especially in the private sector, in businesses, that could potentially threaten business. Okay, in the financial services area in particular, be paramount that the system controls are effective, so that just freely access data. We have previously, a few years back, people used to print the statements of others and use them for visa applications, etc. It's not so easy to do it these days, not only in one bank, but across the industry, because they've woken up to it. So at the systems level, controls must be effective. And then I come again to the people. The people should be well educated. Here, it very much depends on the priorities of any institution or any industry. Again, the leaders are in the financial services and maybe telecom. Okay. There are others also that closely follow the insurance. What I would like to see is, for instance, health services also step up their game, because I can go for I don't know, I'm not confident about my medical records. I know I can get it very easily, and probably another person can also have access to it very easily. Some records are electronic, some are not. Okay, so there are certain sectors that should step up their game. Passports should really.
Danny, are you still there? I think we may have lost. Yeah. Well, let's hold on and see if we can try and get it back.